both here to talk about giving up a car, their cars, for, maybe 7 days, maybe a couple of weeks during the month of March. And this is something they've tried before. They are campaigners who are trying to persuade Angelinos that perhaps, as you said, Rod, the car isn't king. And with petrol, with gas at $4.50 per gallon, it is very expensive to get around these days, though still, as you also suggested, cheap by UK standards. Stana and Seamus, it's good to see you. Welcome to the studio. Maybe, Stana, first of all, just explain the background to this, because you have tried going car-free in Los Angeles before, haven't you?
Yeah. Hi, thank you. Yeah, I think the background started kind of when I came to Los Angeles. It was an unusual experience to feel so decentrified and to feel so removed from kind of the internal fabric of a city. And that's something that's just a characteristic of being in Los Angeles. We have more of kind of a patchwork community, and we're completely dependent on the highway system and on our cars, for the most part. And it creates a bit of an isolating feeling. And so when I came to Los Angeles, I thought to myself, oh, geez, wouldn't it be great to bring some of that that existence that I was familiar with when living in Chicago and living in Toronto, when traveling throughout major metropolitan cities in Europe and elsewhere, where you feel like you're a part of a community, and there's a lot of access to an interesting kind of vibration, an interesting kind of characteristic of a city. And so, yeah, I wanted to bring that quality to Los Angeles, and thought when I get to a position of having a louder voice, I guess, I would try to lead by example. And Seamus, of course, works with me on the show, and it practices living without a car regularly, and so it was something that he was up for, and we decided to try it out last year.
Now, this is what fascinates me, practicing living without a car in Los Angeles regularly. And I will admit that when people say to me, we're coming to Los Angeles, whether it's on vacation or to work here, and what advice? So my first advice is, make sure you pick up a rental car at the airport, because you just cannot get around in Los Angeles without a car. So, Seamus, I mean, it's a sprawling city, a sprawling concrete jungle of a city. How do you do it?
Well, Peter, it's yes, and as Roderick was pointing out, we do a bit of whinging over here in America about our gas prices going up to $4.50. So it's so you must forgive us for that. However, yeah, I mean, Los Angeles grew up around the automobile. There's a fantastic part of Fast Food Nation, the book by Eric Schlosser, where he talks about LA growing up around the automobile, and a lot of part of that was the growing up the fast food industry of all things. We used to have a great system of transportation. We used to have light rail, and that got torn up in the 1950s in favor of bus systems. And so, like, even connections between the Los Angeles basin and the San Fernando Valley were severed for decades. And you had to take a bus to get over there. Now we have a subway that gets there, and we consider that remarkable progress. But how do you get around LA? I mean, it's one of those things that I think there's also a stigma in this country, and particularly in Los Angeles, about taking anything other than a car. For some reason, people think it means that you're poor or something like that, and so like, well, I can't be seen not in a car. It certainly wouldn't keep my social standing. So the idea of just getting on your bicycle, or like I ran to work today, and I discovered some new things around my neighborhood just by doing that. It requires preparation. That's all it is. Certainly, those of you folks that are in London and know exactly what stops you have to take and where your connections are, just requires a little preparation, a little planning, and it might add 10 to 15 minutes onto your commute, if it's a reasonable commute, but it can be done.
I think the problem with Los Angeles is if you've got a map of the city and you put 2 pins in and say, well, let's try to get from A to B. If it were any other city, like Moscow or London or Chicago, New York, you could do it quite easily on public transport. The chances are here in Los Angeles you just would not be able to do it, or if you could, it might take you all day to figure it out.
Well, interesting that you should mention that, because the rise of Google Maps on everybody's iPhone, your map app, if you wanted to try public transportation, it will actually tell you what the bus line is or what the subway stop is, when it arrives, and when it's departing and when it'll get there, and it'll actually speed up that entire process of sorting through different internet websites. And you can do it on your phone. It's actually really amazing, and I encourage everyone to try it.
But I think, in regards to what you're saying, it's not as far spread as it is perhaps in London, the public transit experience here in Los Angeles. And so it's something definitely that I think, as the media capital of the world, I think, we have an opportunity to be a part of the example setting, and I think we can improve upon what we have and invest in that.
And Stana, here we are, and you are a recognizable face. You're on television. Here we are on Sunset Boulevard. What about the safety issue? It's not the safest of towns, and especially at this late hour at night. It would be a deterrent, I think, for a lot of people, wouldn't it?
I think that, my having a recognizable face doesn't really come into play. People don't really expect to see somebody that they're familiar with. I had a strange experience once of traveling onto the Paramount lot and seeing Morgan Freeman leaving the Paramount lot. And I looked at him, and I was like, I know you. I don't know where I know you from, And so you get a lot of that where somebody looks at you and they say, oh, geez, did we go to high school together?
Yeah, that's what most is. I think I went to high school with you. Oh, no, I've seen you on TV.
Right. Yeah, eventually down the line. So that's not a safety question. I do think, though, that, for Los Angeles, we, as we continue to develop the subway lines, as we continue to develop the bike lanes and so on, that we have to have a concerted effort in maintaining and protecting people's safety.
Yeah, I think people are getting more and more aware of bicyclists being around. I bike with a helmet. I would never get on my bike without it. And I encourage everybody to take safe measures when they're traveling on bicycle as well.
Yep. Seamus and Rod here. I mean, listening to you both, there's lots of things I remember about Los Angeles. I remember the sort of first time there as a student. I mean, we obviously didn't have the money to rent a car, and consequently, I don't think we stayed there at all. I think we just went in and out of the Greyhound station because the thought of getting on the bus network was just so terrifying. Buses have improved a lot in about 40 years, haven't they? The LA buses are a bit better now.
Yeah, they're cleaner, and there's a concerted effort, and most of our buses in Los Angeles now are natural gas vehicles, so they're doing their part. I mean, there was a big effort. We're certainly one of the largest port cities in the world, and the County of Los Angeles took great steps with the Port of Los Angeles to actually increase to clean up the port and do a lot of things. And there's been a lot of changes because there's a lot of health concerns as well. So along with that, yeah, it's cleaner and it's safer. It's more efficient getting around, and the stigma, I think, is starting to wear off. But yes, like you said, I think a lot of people are afraid, why would I take the bus? I'm going to get mugged. And so I encourage you to look up some statistics on LA transportation, and I bet you'll find out it's a lot safer than you think it is.
And the other thing that's happened is light rail, isn't it? The railway system's actually been extended after years of shrinking.
Yes, and thankfully, Stana lives near some of the subway stations. I was doing a play down in downtown a few years ago, and I lived in Hollywood, and I took the subway every day, and I figured out that my commute was 23 minutes. It would have probably been 30 to 35 minutes in my car, and it was hassle-free. Peter and I were discussing this earlier about the tradition of everybody getting on the subway or the tube and having the morning paper or having a paperback in front of you, and being able to focus on your day. I sat there with my script in the morning and talked to myself like all crazy people and actors do, and I was able to sort of
They're often one and the same.
I was able to sort of sort out my day and clear out my head and sort of think about what lay ahead of me that day. And I think a lot of people enjoy that about a commute that involves public transportation. It takes the worry and the stress out of getting there and getting on time, and just allows you to sit there and focus.
Yeah, I read a statistic a while ago that Southern California has the largest population of drivers in the whole of U.S. And when you take our state versus the state of Texas that has perhaps 1/2 of the amount of drivers that we have, I think that that's something definitely that we can improve on. We create a lot of hazards by forcing people to drive all the time. You have problems of fatigue, traffic, age, people not being able to probably drive in their best health, but having to do so. And it would be nice to have the resource of a subway system that would kind of be far extending.
I think also just the very fabric of society, the way that it's built around the car still, when we're talking decades here, that a lot has to change. There are so many streets, even in some of the rural areas, some of the suburbs, where there aren't pavements. There are no sidewalks, and that's because people will just drive to the end of the block to go to the store or whatever. The culture isn't that you will, as you do, run or walk or take a bike.
I was running to work today, and I was on a street called Beverly Drive that cuts through the middle of a rather posh area of Los Angeles, and I realized there was no sidewalk on the area. Yes. So it's 6 a.m, and I'm a bit off road, and discovering, like, wow, okay, this is one of the richest neighborhoods in Los Angeles, and there's no sidewalk on this side of the street. So that happens, and it was a delightful surprise, and an interesting challenge, but happens. And we were talking about there's a thing called the Cahuenga Pass that separates Los Angeles basin from San Fernando Valley, the valley as we call it. And if you ever try to get on your bike and go over it, you're going to realize that there was absolutely no thought put into anybody ever walking from LA to the valley because there's no sidewalk, and you're sharing the road with cars that are going 45 miles an hour. So yes, it is a mentality that still exists, and it's clear in the way that the roads were laid out and the lack of sidewalks.
Yeah, but all that is really in the end is a potential for
absolutely,
change.
A potential for change, absolutely.
Yeah, and I don't know that we ever intended for ATP to be exclusive to Los Angeles. I mean, we have gotten people to volunteer time in Romania, in England, in France, so in Saudi Arabia, even just across the globe. People have dedicated days without their car, and it's resulted in some really incredible stories. Like, for instance, in Romania, I tell this story every once in a while. There's a school that goes car-free every Friday. And what happened was there were a number of couples that formed because they were meeting each other on the bus. And now I think 2 couples are getting married this summer. And they even asked if I would be their godmother because they met as a result of participating in the Alternative Travel Project. So, it's hopefully an international effort. And I'm hoping that'll create some more opportunities here and in other developing countries as well.
Well, Stana, do you think that could happen? I'm sorry, Peter. I've just wondered if you think that could happen in Los Angeles, because you talked about the stigma of public transport, and certainly buses used to have this kind of image of being the transport of gardeners and maids, didn't they? People who work in fairly menial roles, and nobody ever said that America was a classless society, and especially, I suppose, not these rich bits of Los Angeles.
Yeah, I do feel that there's an element of that stigma still here in Los Angeles, but I think that there's a really wonderful kind of youthful exuberance, and I think there's a great ambition to create a better space and a better living environment and an investment in our future as a planet, and especially here in Los Angeles. And I would think and hope, and hopefully I'm a part of something that says that we live in a city that has some of the best creatives on the planet, imaginary creatives or imaginative creatives. And I would think that by combining everyone's efforts, we could create something that would be attractive and perhaps even fashionable to participate in. And I think there's that potential with travel.
I think we're trying to say to folks that, yes, we have ample resources to be able to drive any car that we want, but we're trying to accept maybe a greater responsibility to being good stewards of this planet, to say that we don't have to do that, but we can find another way to do it. And we're hoping to inspire some people to take that same jump with us.
And truly, if we would have a wonderful A-list film actor riding the subway a few times, I think that would encourage a lot of people to want to do the same, not just for the fact of meeting somebody like that, but just because it becomes it becomes chic.
Yeah.
Not that that's the aim behind it, but it's just a matter of like deciding to make a different choice.
Yeah, and Rod, I would encourage anyone who has that same impression of that yes, that's the way it used to be. Ride the bus or get on the subway. When I took it, there are men and women in suits traveling there and who just don't want to take their car, and it has no sort of like social economic boundaries. It's just people who don't want to focus on that. They have their briefcase and their suit, and it gets them to work.
What's really interesting was I was on Virgin Airlines recently, and I really enjoyed my trip in a way that I haven't enjoyed flying in a long time, and they made it really entertaining and very comfortable. And I think that public transit in general has the potential to do something like that. And I think if anywhere, it could start here in Los Angeles.
What a lovely thought. Well, it's been a joy to listen to you both, to talk to you both. Thank you very much. We wish you all the best with your movement starting in March here to get commuters in Los Angeles to give up their cars for 7 days. And Peter, thank you very much for bringing Stana and Seamus to us.